life lessons, logistics. Let's go. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Storytelling Chronicles, Life Lessons and Logistics. I am the Bodacious Cowboy, and I have a great show in store for you. Today, my guest is Dan Lindsay. He is the co-founder, and vice president of Linkage Logistics, Inc., and also the founder of the Broker Carrier Summit, which is going to happen this October 12th and 13th in Tampa, Florida. We're going to bring him on right now, and we'll talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, the risk and rewards of starting up your own business, and the obstacles that you have to overcome. So let's bring him on. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Good, my man. How was your weekend?
It was good. Spent some good time with the family. Got away from the email for a little while.
There you go.
And was able to recharge. So how about yourself?
Yeah, I had a great weekend, but all weekends go by fast for some reason or another, and the weeks are long. You know how that works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You spend the entire week looking for that weekend, and before you know it, it's already gone.
Yep, because you look forward to it too much. That's why, But hey, listen, for all the folks out there who don't know who Dan Lindsay is, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so hello, everyone. Dan Lindsay, co-founder of Linkage Logistics. I've been in the freight industry in many ways since 2001, ever since graduating high school. Got my start at UPS, loading trucks on a dock for 6 years. My dad was a driver for 30 years, and so it's kind of always been in my blood, I guess. I told my dad I would never go and work for a logistics company, and here we are. So
there you go. You were in the service too, weren't you?
I was. Yeah, I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years.
Nice. Thank you for your service. I appreciate that. Was there a good transition from being in the Marines? Were you in the logistics side, or what were you in the Marines?
Yeah, so I was not in logistics in the Marine Corps. So before I went in to the Marines, I read a book called On War by Karl von Clausewitz. So he was a Prussian general who was instrumental in the defeat of Napoleon. And one of the things that he mentioned in that, and I found out later on when I was in, that this is actually required reading for all non-commissioned officers, this book. One of the things he said was there are two indispensable ways to basically defeat an army or a military unit. One, you disable their communications, and one, you take out their logistics. Right. And so I joined the Marine Corps. I was a communications specialist. I was a wireman. Learned a little bit about that industry and telecommunications and telephones, and it really wasn't my jam. So I figured if communications is indispensable, I tried that out. And the other indispensable piece of unit is logistics, I'll try my hand at logistics. And so went into logistics, never looked back.
Now, was that the plan? I mean, what was it a plan to get into logistics? Or how did you just fall into, hey, you know what? I'm going to start my own business.
Yeah, so no, not at all, actually. In fact, my goal was to become an officer in the Marine Corps and run out a 30-year military career. But a couple of years after I joined, I graduated college, got married, started having a family, and I was in the reserves at the time. And the president at the time lowered the age limit for new officer entrants. And so I was aged out at that point naturally. And so I figured that was a sign from above that I was not meant to ride out my career as an officer in the Marine Corps. And so spent the rest of my time in the reserves, 6 more years after that, and didn't really know what I wanted to do professionally. I knew that I was good with people. I knew that I had a mind for solving problems. So I went to go work in the medical diagnostic world for a while, doing customer service for them. Indianapolis is a huge life sciences hub. And so there's a lot of companies based out of here. So I went to go work for one of those companies, found myself sitting at a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day, answering phone calls, and everybody was mad at me when they were on the phone. So I figured I would just go out and try something new. So I decided to sell life insurance for 3 years. Not the greatest decision
No.
of my entire career. Did so against the advice of my wife and everybody who had an ounce of sense who
What are
was
you doing
advising me at the
there?
time. Well, I was married. I was married and I had 2 kids at the time, and I was going to a commission-only job in an industry that I had no idea how it worked. It sounded like a good idea at the time, and it was not. But I learned a lot about myself, my abilities, my shortcomings. I learned a lot about sales, and so spent 3 years there. Wasn't really making a lot of money. It was not a great experience, so decided to go back into something that I knew, which was logistics.
That's so cool. I totally get it, and I think you'll agree with me. But I married into a military family. I married a major general's daughter, and one of the biggest things, you probably heard me say it over and over again, and I believe that you have the same mentality, is always look at the what if scenarios. When you're in the armed forces, you always want to look at the what ifs from an enemy point of view. Like, what happens if they did this? How would we respond proactively in order to put ourselves into position A, to be in front of the curve where they wouldn't be able to infiltrate it. It's like Eisenhower in the interstate. When he built that, he had that in mind in the United States, and that's where the interstates came in the diagonals and verticals, in which way they built in case we had to be mobilized and put the troops out there in front of an invasion, that we would have that access in order to fend off and protect our country. So, that kind of has that segue from a military point of view into logistics, because that has a lot to do with it, right? I mean, when you
Yeah.
really think about it, it's such a challenging and rewarding field that most of the time, if you are proactive and looking or have a forefront kind of vision as to the possibilities that will arise, you'll be there ahead of anybody else, rather than having that reactive mindset where you really don't have a plan and you do things haphazardly, where it's costing customers or even maybe a prospect money because you didn't do your homework and look at all those possibilities. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think a lot of people, whether it's their personal lives or in their professional careers, spend a lot of time trying to avoid problems and trying to avoid challenges. I love this. There's an old Stoic phrase that it says, "The obstacle is the way." Um, one of
Exactly.
the one of the things that you learn in business, and one of the most valuable things I've learned in life, is that the quicker you embrace, I don't even call them problems anymore. I call them challenges.
That,
Um, the the quicker you embrace the challenge, the more likely you are to be able to define what the solution to that challenge looks like. And I think people spend so much time trying to avoid obstacles, trying to avoid pitfalls and challenges, that they don't get an opportunity to craft the narrative on what the solution will be. And so the solution ends up being foisted on them as opposed to them defining it for themselves.
right. And those kind of reactions cost money. That they,
Absolutely.
it's, yeah, as simple as it is. I mean, we can get into it, but it does cost them money because they were unprepared. And instead of figuring out the problem, they're throwing people at the problem, and
Hmm.
that kind of response is very costly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
So let's get into start. Great segue. Let's get into how you started or co-founded Linkage Logistics, and how you incorporated all those learning lessons to help you along the way, and then get into some of the obstacles that you had to go through in order to get over them. I mean, it could be the issues that you mentioned, hiring people, getting them up to speed. When we were in the back room, you were talking about what you recently just did with your company, and how beneficial that it is. So let's just start from the beginning, and the type of problems that you had when you started.
Yeah, so the beginning actually is back all the way in 2013 when I re-entered the logistics world from the life insurance industry. I went to work for a large freight brokerage and immediately was struck with a couple of things. One, the relationship between brokers and carriers, that dynamic was something that I did not really understand until after I got back into logistics in the full truckload side. And so that was a challenge. I think the biggest lesson that I took away from my 6 years at that company was always be paying attention and always be, oh, did I lose you?
Yeah, no, we're good.
Oh, cool. Always be paying attention, always be learning, and tuck things away in your mind for later. So I spent 6 years at a big box brokerage. After that, I was successful as an account manager, ran a decent sized book of business, but I was burnt out. My family didn't know who I was. I was always gone during the week. Whenever we went on vacations, I had to go to a place where my company had an office so I could spend half the time on vacation, half the time actually in the office working. And so I got out, I went into the consulting world and realized that the pace in the consulting world was not where I was at. It's a very slow pace, and you can work on a prospect for 2 or 3 years and maybe see a deal.
Right.
So it's very slow, and it's all credentialed, and I didn't have any credentials at the time. So around August of 2019, I started talking to a friend of mine whose children and my children go to school together. And he's wanted to get into logistics for a long time. And he asked me, so what's preventing you from going back into the freight brokerage world? And I said, well, nothing really, except for the desire to do it. And he said, well, what do you need? And I said, I need autonomy. I need autonomy to build the brokers the way I know it needs to be built, in the way that I know it needs to be built. And he said, if I can give you that, will you start a company for me? And I said, yes. And so we took the next 6 months to kind of put together a business plan over many, many cigars and many glasses of bourbon, which I found, by the way, is the most cathartic way to start a business. Cigars, bourbon, and a wood-paneled room goes very far in the planning process for me. So it took 6 months to put it together and launched it in March of 2020. So.
And so so it was you and your partner, right? Before you even got any headcounts working for you or anything like that. So you're building your business plan, kind of like going by the seat of your pants. I think everybody can agree that in the beginning, you got that feeling out stage, you're trying this, you're trying that, you're taking a ton of notes, you're trying to figure it out, what's working, what's not working. Let's talk about that and the stuff that you had to go through in order to find that niche and what you actually wanted to do, and all the pain points that were that were related to that decision making.
Yeah, I think if you're an entrepreneur, and you can speak into this as well, I'd imagine as well. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to embrace failure.
Oh yeah.
You have to redefine your expectations as to what it means to fail and what it means to succeed. We started Linkage March of 2020, and I had never had to recruit anybody in my life. I was always a W-2 employee. I never had to put together an operational plan. Never had to put together a budget for a company anyway. Never had to care about a P&L or a balance sheet or anything like that. And so doing all of those things is difficult in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Doing so for the first time 14 days before the entire world shuts down in an unprecedented way, that's a whole new level of shit.
Level.
Right? So
understatement.
Yeah. So that was stressful, but again, the obstacle is the way. And so we put our heads together. We got to work. I knew that I can do a couple things really well. One of them is sell. The other one is manage freight. So I did what I did well. And I had a couple of buddies reached out to me over the course of the first year that said, hey, we're looking for a place to land. We don't like where we're at. Can you take us on? And so we slowly began to grow through my network in the industry. And we're only bringing on people that I can trust and that I know.
Yes.
Because one of the things you learn is that especially in those early months and early years, I will take somebody that I trust versus somebody who knows the industry twice.
Sure.
Because you're vulnerable as a young company. We're like a 4-year-old child right now, linkages. And children can't think for themselves at that age. They're not, self-sustaining. They're completely dependent upon the trust of their parents.
Right.
And so we only bring on people that we know and that we can trust, and that can bring a slightly different set of skills to the table than I can. I don't want 1,000 different Dan Lindsays working for the company. First of all, nobody would get along ever. Secondly, you don't grow that way.
No.
I don't want everybody thinking the same way I do. I want different ideas. I want different skill sets, because that's when we can grow broadly, and we can diversify our customer base, diversify our service offering. And that's really served us well.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I would rather walk into a room with highly intellectual people that know a hell of a lot more than me, because in this industry, if you're not learning every single day, you're going to be left behind. That's the evolution of logistics and how fast it's turning and burning. You got to be there. So that's why I would rather jump into that room. I mean, if you're the smartest person in the room and everybody else is looking up, that's the wrong room to be in, my friend. That is absolutely the wrong room.
Absolutely. Well, and then you start getting a big head as well. Oh, I'm the smartest person in the room. I must have all the answers. And I'll tell you, the first time you say that to yourself as a leader is the last day you are a leader, because leaders do not have all the answers.
No.
Their job is to assemble a team of people who have different perspectives on the answers, and they'll come to the answer together. So,
right, you want to be able to lead them to the water, but not show them how to drink it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, have you had turnover? I mean, how many people, when you first started, are still with you today, or how has that evolved from the beginning of Linkage?
Yeah, so I'm happy to say the first 5 people that we hired are still with us today.
Oh, that's awesome. That says a lot.
Well, and again, they're people that I've known and are very close to, and so we've been able to build that trust early on. We have grown up to around 16. We were up to around 16 people the midpoint last year. And then we ran into some challenges internally, and then also the market decided to take a giant nosedive.
Really?
And so, when did that happen? I don't know.
That didn't happen.
That's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, so the market went to pot for us around July of last year, and so we've been the right word is pivoting ever since, trying to figure out what works, how slim of a budget can we run a freight brokerage on, and what does our employee mix need to look like? How many producers do we need for every person in the back office? We were very payroll heavy at the midpoint last year because we were poised to grow, and we didn't know how long or how short the wave was going to last. And so we just kept building out our back office alongside the front, and we found out we were in a bad spot around September, October last year.
So you have a nice balance between hunter and farmers.
We do, yeah. In fact, one of our brokers who has been an agent for us since day one came to me. I wouldn't say at the beginning of the year, and he said, "Hey, I want to get out of doing brokerage. I'm really burned out on the operations side, but I really want to develop business. And you're going to get to meet this guy at the summit in Tampa because he's speaking, Matt Miller. He's kind of moved. He's kind of moved from the broker agent side of the house to he's directing our business development efforts and kind of casting the vision for us in that sense.
That's perfect. So you're talking about building a business plan in a really soft bear market for sure. Because I mean, if you're not reinventing the plan, you're in big trouble, right?
Yeah.
Especially in this market. So for myself, I don't really live in the present, even though the present is very important. I'm looking outwards to quarter one, quarter two of 2024, and trying to position myself and put myself in position A. So when the market changes, we're right where we need to be. How about linkage? What are they doing from now through this last quarter, which is coming up real quick, going into 2024? I mean, what's the evolution of linkage look like in what you're doing?
Yeah, so the reason we started Linkage was around creating value or adding value.
Mhm.
I've always taken the idea of if you can't add value to your customer's operation, then they
Right.
don't need to be a customer of yours. Same for our carriers. If we're not adding value to our carriers' network or their lifestyle or their business, they shouldn't be a carrier for us. They should go find somebody that will partner with them in a way that benefits them. So what we've done in the last, call it, it's kind of been in the works for about 6 or 7 months now, is we are adding managed services to our portfolio of services that we offer. And so we're not just a transactional broker. In fact, a couple of our customers have reached out to us multiple times in the last year and asked, hey, can you take over this segment of our transportation? Because we know one of a number of things. We know we're losing money, or we don't know how much money we're losing, or we don't know why we're losing money.
Right.
And we've told our customers a number of times, look, you're not transportation people. It's okay that you don't know these things. You're a retailer, or you're a farmer, or you're a manufacturer. You don't
Right.
specialize in transportation. You specialize in what you specialize in. And so we're pivoting a little bit and adding a managed services team to our operations here.
Yeah, that's that's a good plan. And when we were in the back room prior to the show, and we were talking. I'm definitely not a transactional one, and I said it's just because of the time involved. Would you rather have 15 solid, sustainable customers, or 150 in your pipeline, that are just coming and going, like the wind? I would rather have that 15 really good customers where the pipeline, there's a lot of fluidity in it, and it's flowing every single week with, it's almost like knowing what your paycheck is, because
Right.
it's coming, it's dedicated, it's fluidity. You don't really have to worry about that, except the only thing you have to worry about is always servicing your customer if it was the first shipment that they ever gave you, because that's the only one that they really remember you for. You could have a billion data boys, but as soon as that first one goes awry, which one they're going to focus in on, right? So
Absolutely.
it's over servicing them. You don't have to worry about the profits. We're service over profits every day of the week, because if your customer is not successful, you're not going to be successful. So you got to over service them and keep that value. We were talking about value earlier. How did you define your value that's part of your mission statement that you sell as Linkage? How did you come? I mean, that is probably one of the biggest problems out there. Everybody talks about value, what their mission statement is, what their niche, all of that. And I found for myself, Dan, that when I was coming out of the gate, I had heavy CPG, intermodal, that kind of stuff. And then I was trying to figure out, okay, where is my strongest value? Where's my niche? Where do I belong? And I'll tell you, I sat in a diner, you were laughing about having cigarettes and drinking bourbon. I was writing everything on a napkin, and it was just like, Jesus. I mean, seriously, it's just like, because you have all these ideas and it's like 100 ideas. Now you have to start removing and start bringing it down and start getting, that laser focus on what you want to do. How did you do that? I mean, for all the audience out there, I know it's a struggle for them for identifying, each one of your people that work for you too. How did you help them to create their own value, their own niche, what they're really good in? It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I think for us, it comes down to, and we have, I suppose we have a mission statement, and we have a set of values that we operate under as a company. But at the end of the day, business is about relationships, just like everything else in life. And so you always end up with the kinds of relationships you try to pursue. And so when we pursue relationships with customers, we don't pursue them with a blanket, we're going to just add value everywhere to your operation. We take time. Yeah. We take time to drill into their operation. We take time to drill into the roles that they have set aside for their operation. And we dig deep with the how and the who and the what and the why behind all the decisions being made. Because at the end of the day, transactional business is fine. Okay, yeah. That's where the industry has kind of evolved to over the last 20 or 30 years. I understand that. But at the end of the day, you don't build trust transactionally.
No.
You build trust consistently over time. And that's one of the frustrations, I think, also with independent freight brokers or even brokers that work at these bigger companies. They work in a transactional way. Yeah. And then want to complain and be upset when they're treated as a transactional partner. When they've worked for the same company for years or the same customers for years, and they still move freight, but they're never able to get past the amount of freight that they're moving for that company. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that you just haven't created that value.
Right.
You haven't built that trust in that way, at that level that the customer requires to move to the next level. So we're always trying to push the envelope and move into a deeper level of partnership with our customers.
So you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, so you're kind of moving away from the transactional more into the managed transportation discipline, right? So I think this is a great statement. Not all prospects are good prospects. Not all freight is good freight, and not all clients are good clients, especially when you look at the ROI on everything that you do. Sometimes, and it's kind of hard to do because it could even be your first customer that came on board with linkage, and they're like the poster child of your company. It's like they're the ones that made me who I am. If it wasn't for them, I don't know what I would have done, but they had the trust, but they're transactional. They give me maybe 1 or 2 loads a month or whatever it is. And it's kind of hard to push them off to the side when you're in that transitional state, right?
Yep.
You have your first customer that ever came on board with you, or have you since replaced them and started really focusing on, the customers you have in your pipeline, the annual transportation spend they have, how large of a company they are, the upstream, the downstream, the verticals in which they work in, all that kind of stuff. How did you do that?
So thankfully, our first customer is still with us,
Awesome.
and they're a larger company. I think their top line revenue was between $500 and $1 million and $1 billion last year. So they do quite a bit of business, and they're in the manufacturing space. And I've had relationships with them for a long time. And so we've had those challenges though with them. It's a transactional model. I used to back in the day manage quite a bit of their freight, but it's with the market the way it is now. It's been a challenge. There's a saturation of brokers. Everybody's trying to get the lowest price. And we have to continue to come back to the well and listen. I've known you for years now.
Right.
Are you telling me that after all that we've gone through and been through, I'm not worth the extra $35 that you're going to save going with this guy's broker over here who's probably out of Glendale, California, who's going to double broker your freight and cause you all kind of problems? Come on. And so we've had those conversations, and they've gone well, and then they've not gone well. But it's a conversation that's ongoing.
Yeah, the one thing that I've learned, and I'm steadfast about that, and from what you're saying, I believe you are too. But one thing one should never do is devalue your value. God only knows how much time and effort, money, both physically and mentally, you put into the career. That's worth a lot of money. that you can't buy. You really can't buy. And when you devalue yourself, your image, your marketing, your branding goes right out the door with that. So, when I see those people racing to the bottom, I really feel sorry for them. I won't do it. I won't do it for many reasons. And one of the things that, I'll be talking about at the Broker Carrier Summit is just that, where there's carriers and brokers that are fighting against each other and they're trying to race to the bottom, and it pulls everybody down. It pulls the carriers down. It pulls you have to be steadfast. You have to stay where you belong and then justify the reasons behind that. And you just said it. After all I've done for you, you've been with us, you know the value that I offer. That $35. I mean, now you have to explain to them what that $35 represents. And can you afford to lose me to bring somebody else out that doesn't really know your operation or how well you do it, to take that chance? Because if you do, there's high probability that $35 you think you're saving, it's going to cost you like 10 times that amount of money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I told them before is, listen, you have, call it $100,000 worth of product on your truck, and you're fighting with me over $30. I'm just not going to bid on that, because I'm not going to compromise my reputation, my company's reputation. I'm not going to represent your company in a way that is going to potentially cause your company problems. And I don't want this truck to end up on the news. Nobody wins. So
yeah, I mean, you know what, and that kind of tells you a story in and of itself. Where's the loyalty? Why are you chasing me to the bottom? I thought we were congruent. I've been in your corral for 2-3 years now, been working pretty good, and now you're asking me, or demanding me, I should really say, because that's what they're all doing.
Yeah.
Oh man, the powers that be, I have to answer to somebody out there. They're all about the numbers. I really need you to come down another 100, and it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I mean, and I mean, I'm the kind of person that would go back to them and say this: hey, I know you sell your products to Walmart. Do I go to you and say, you know what, I don't like paying your prices. Can you take off another $50 and I'll buy it from you, directly or whatever? No. Well, why is that? Because I have to, I have people to pay. I have to make a profit. Hello. That's why we're all in the same business, sort of speaking, in different parts of it, but that's what we're in. Everybody has to make a dollar to survive, but it has to be justified. Tell me more about it. Why do you have to do that? What aren't we doing that we haven't done in the past?
Yeah.
Some of them can't answer that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, and I think a big reason as to why we're seeing the rampant level of fraud and sketchy business being done in the industry in the last 4 years is because of those practices by shippers who are so concerned with saving all the money that they can. They squeeze people, and they make the environment unhealthy. And so a lot of bad actors come in, and they know they can take loads for super dirt cheap rates, and problems happen. Let's put it that way. So
oh yeah. And the other thing too, Dan, is that if you have, let's say, a $50 million operation and you're trying to dive to the bottom to save money because it's just a numbers game. If you think about $50 million, how many truckloads or whatever they're moving, right? The thing is that you have to look at sustainability, because I was on that side when I was managing well over $100 million worth of transportation spend. And I had that corral of carriers that I relied on all the time. I took care of them, treated them well. They did the same thing on me. Now, if I started chasing to the bottom, the first thing that carriers do is that, oh, sure, I wasn't worth it back then, but now you're in a corner and you want me to bail you out. What have you done for me lately? Mm-hmm. They remember that kind of stuff, so you want to feed them annually. You want to keep them busy. However, those core carriers, what happens is that you keep like the top three, right, or four, and you feed them. You start divvying up the transportation spend kind of evenly, so they're all kind of happy and everything. So that when the market flips, they're going to be there. You don't have to go back to the procurement and start procuring all these carriers to come in to fill that void because you let your core carriers down and now they're gone. And screw that guy. There's no loyalty. Whether good, bad, or indifferent, you have to feed them all the time.
Yeah. Well, and truck drivers talk. So it only takes a couple of instances where that happens for your facility to be labeled a do not load or a place you want to avoid.
Yeah, like what's that called? The preferred carrier, preferred shipper status.
Yeah, shipper of choice. You want to be that shipper of choice.
I'm going to call them. Yeah, absolutely. So listen, we're coming towards the end of this show. Let's talk about the event, the Broker Carrier Summit in Tampa. For those of you that don't know about it, I strongly recommend that you go to the website and look at the Broker Carrier Summit in Tampa. I'm telling you, it's going to blow your mind. Dan, you created. Tell about all the sponsors, all the people that are going to be there, the topics, the agenda. So much stuff going on.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. I was telling somebody the other day, this is probably one of the most fulfilling things I've done in my career is start the Broker Carrier Summit, because one of the reasons why I got out of the industry is because I didn't feel that I could make a difference where I was at. And so coming back in, I wanted to be able to find a way to make a positive impact on the logistics industry. And I think this is really going a long way to do that. So we have, I think we're up to 19 speakers now. It's all said and done.
Yeah.
So 19 speakers. The topics are going to range from, as a carrier, how should you envision technology, to we're having a safety and compliance roundtable. Jeff, you're doing lessons from the shipper side on how to sell if you're a broker and how to sell if you're a carrier. And we're also talking about double brokering, how to fight the scammers. And we're going to have a couple of really good networking opportunities. There's a rooftop bar and a pirate water taxi involved in one of them. So I found that out. That's going to be exciting. So it's going to be a great time. And the reason for the event, I was thinking about this the other day as I was kind of preparing some of the remarks that I'm going to make, is I didn't want to just create another event for people to go to, right? We all go to conferences and summits and seminars, and a lot of them you leave wondering why you even went. So what we're really trying to do is create a space for both brokers and carriers to come together and collaborate, find ways to improve their relational dynamic. Because carriers and brokers, their relationship has been fragmented and broken for as long as I've known. Been in the industry. So if we can repair that relationship, if we can add value to everyone who is coming to the summit, then we're doing our job. And one of the things I'm going to talk about while we're there is this event is a moment, but we are going to be building from that moment. We're going to be building a movement that, if we do it well and if we do it correctly, will change the way the industry operates. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. I mean, I know the agenda. I know the topics. It's. I don't think that there's a waste of time during those 2 days. I mean, whoever attends, you're going to be doing something. I guarantee it. Every single hour. I mean, there's so much stuff going on, and then you have these side conferences and breakout meetings, and the one-on-one where you're talking about new connections, new business partnerships, understanding, because if you're a broker and a carrier you never met before, you can have those open conversations and talk about, the threats that you feel, or maybe the strengths of each other and the things that you may not know about that you only assumed or heard through the grapevine, and you know how that works. It starts out orange. By the time it gets to the end, it's like white. So it's like, this is a great time for you to come. And here's the kicker, that the brokers and the carriers there, I'm going to assume and hedge my bet that they're all ethical and they want to learn. If you're an
Yes.
unethical carrier or broker going there, man, you've got a set. I mean, seriously. I mean, when you really think about that, I mean, these are the people that move America and do things right, but they're still in that learning phase, and they're learning every single day about, new ways to communicate, to collaborate, and to truly understand the shipper's point of view and what their problems are, their wants, their needs, and how that translates to a broker, to a shipper, and that, it's the logistics triangle. We talk about the Bermuda Triangle. It's those key points in that connectivity that everybody has to look for congruency, and that's how things tick. And they're so far apart. It's terrible. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. So I think
if
you're building, Dan, and all the speakers there, I think it's really going to pull everything together really, really well.
I hope so. I think it will. I mean, you think about, if you're a broker, how many times have you went out and met your carriers? Or if you're a carrier, how many times have you gone out to lunch or had coffee with your broker? They're your customer, for God's sake, right?
I mean, even a shipper. I mean, because there's a lot. Let's face it. There's a lot of carriers have direct contact with shippers that don't necessarily do with brokers. Not the other way around with brokers and carriers and shippers, but that carrier does that. So it kind of opens up the door and gives them a little bit more bullets in their gun to understand what to ask for and what they can receive to help them reduce costs. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
There's so much stuff out there.
Yeah. Well, and one of the cool parts about this event as well is that nobody's doing it. That's what blows my mind. I was talking to some colleagues when I was trying to put the first one together in Indianapolis, and they're like, "Why are you doing this?" It's like, nobody's ever heard of getting brokers and carriers in the same room and talking about our differences and talking about building partnerships. Nobody's thought about getting a bunch of carriers in the room and having them tell brokers what makes them upset about brokers. I mean, this is the only event in town that is approaching business relationships between brokers and carriers in this way. I mean, trucking companies have their conferences they go to, brokers have their conferences they go to, the tech companies have the conferences they go to. But what if we got all of them together? We're all stakeholders in the same equations. It makes sense.
Oh, it definitely does. And one of the biggest sayings, and I've been saying it for years, and it's part of my DNA. I don't fire brokers. Brokers fire themselves. I don't fire carriers. Carriers fire themselves. Here's a great way to find out how that happens. Seriously, from a shipper's point of view. It's all up to you. If you do what you say what you do, and you document it. It's almost like ISO, in layman's terms. And that's what we're going to try to get across. And it's good that they, converse and ask questions among themselves. When I do mine, I'm going to ask how many brokers we have in here, how many carriers. Hey, why don't you introduce yourself? What a great way to do that. And then take it from the room after the that part or segment of the program, and have those one-offs, man. Sit off to the side, figure things out. That's what it's all about. And you're right. This is the only one that's out there that actually does that. I heard there was a fight in Indianapolis or something like that. Wasn't there, or something like that?
There wasn't a fight. There was the first question that we asked, and I've learned from this. Is like, we went around the room. We had about 75 people there, and I asked, so what's your name? Why are you here? What do you hope to gain?
Yeah.
And the first guy out of the gate, it's like, hey, I'm here because I hate brokers. And then he said something very interesting though after that. He said, but I've never met one of them. And so that what's the word I'm looking for? That dynamic is common. If you ask carriers, carte blanche, what's their opinion of brokers? Oh, brokers suck. They're all shady. They're all out to take all of our money. When was the last time you sat down with one of them? Oh, I don't sit down with brokers. Really? Why not? And for the brokers part, it's the same thing. Oh, carriers are all shady. They're all, trying to lie about, why they're not picking up the load on time. Really? You ever sat down with them and talked about what it takes to operate a truck? Because I guarantee you have no idea what it takes to operate a truck.
You know what? And that's perfect, because and I suggested this a long time ago. I said, listen, if you're going into a brokerage, part of your training is that, one, if your brokerage is near a DC or warehouse, part of the training would be to connect with that warehouse or DC and saying, I would like my new trainee coming in who wants to be a broker to see firsthand how a warehouse operates, or a DC. When a truck driver comes in, look at a truck, look at his cab, ask him questions, get firsthand knowledge. I think it would be so beneficial for brokers out there when they're coming on board and they're new at it, to kind of figure it out. No, you're not going to learn everything. It takes years to really understand it, but your perspective of the industry and what you were hired to do will be much broader than just being, tunnel vision. And I really think that should be part of the regiment when it comes down to training. I really, really do. I think it would be very beneficial.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Great. Well, listen, I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks. I can't wait to get down there, have a few cocktails, a good cigar, and
absolutely
smart, talk some smack, and talk to all these carriers and brokers, and just meet new people, man. I'm really looking forward to it, man.
Likewise, my friend. Yeah, it's going to be a great time.
Awesome. So thanks, Dan, for joining me today on the Storytelling Chronicles. Got a great guest coming in next week. I also have a talent acquisition guy that used to work for Yellow Freight. So that's going to be an awesome conversation, because he was on the ground level when everything went down. So that's going to be an amazing conversation. So follow the Storytelling Chronicles, share, follow, and we will see you next week. I appreciate it, man. Dan, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, take care. Have it. Another logistics life and lesson learned. Until next time.